Yeah.
It is pretty hot. We were here yesterday. We had school yesterday.
Oh, okay.
Let's see.
One of our students said he was in Vegas for the weekend. It was like 107 up there or something.
Yeah, it's getting cooler. It's cooling down. So, a couple housekeeping things to talk about. Number one, I don't know if anybody in California saw the email that we received from the owner of TED.com. Did anybody see that?
No, I didn't see it.
I posted it, I think, yesterday,
Oh, did you?
and there would be a big red TED. Was the link that was on there was to TED.com. But we received a very nice letter, and I will read it to you. Because it's something we should have down on tape for the record. So 50 years from now when people are watching these. Okay, 1,000, okay. Let's see. We have to mute and mute. Okay. So let's see, where is it? Here we go. Okay, so, Dear Ed, I know Susan has written back to communicate our appreciation of the way you're putting TED Talks to good use. We're collecting some of the more inspiring stories we're aware of how TED is being used in the real world, and yours is definitely one of those. It would be great to have a sense of it visually as well as in the eloquent words you've written so that I can share it internally. Do you have any photos of any of your teaching in action, especially with TED Talk being shown, or a pic or pics of any of your graduates who was impacted by TED Talks in some way and who has found a good job? It's been exciting to see TEDx events held in quite a few prisons and to hear of the impact that has and to hear of TED Talks being circulated inside jail. It really does feel as if the national narrative on incarceration is shifting and a growing sense of the tragic waste of human potential. You're doing noble work to tackle that. With gratitude, Chris. So that's Chris Anderson, the owner of TED.com. So that was, I think, good acknowledgement, which we shared with the Department of Corrections here. And so I wanted to share that because even though we're really here more focused on breaking the chains of recidivism than you are in California, the California campus is what makes this possible. Right, Sean?
Yeah.
Correct. Okay. So so we want to acknowledge that we got a letter from an email from Chris Anderson at TED because the school in California makes it possible for us to do that. So thank you in California. Also, I want to acknowledge that we gave somebody here a challenge, and they looks like they accomplished it. So Rachel was given the task of getting a new printer for our magazines, and it looks like she got 2 printers to come in, one below our bid and one slightly above it, right? So yes, thank you very much, Rachel, because I know that you worked hard to make that happen, and you learned a lot, right? Okay. Good. So now we will move on to this week's employment planning workshop. All schools like Larson, all post-secondary schools, which is a technical way of saying schools for people that are adults, 18 or over, all schools like our schools are evaluated based upon placement, not education, not what is the quality of the instructors. I have a daughter that graduated from UC San Diego, and they talk about, well, we have 7 living Nobel laureates on staff as professors at UCSD, so your kids should come here because there's 7 Nobel laureates here. But our school is not based on that. Our school is based upon placement, which means what? Dwayne, what does placement mean?
To place you where you want to be at, or what?
You mean like if you have a time machine?
Yeah.
Okay. Placement means employment.
Employment placement. Jobs.
Okay, jobs. That's what placement means. Schools, all schools like ours are evaluated based upon placement. And we are fortunate that we have the highest placement in the state. Now, let me qualify that, because some people say that can't possibly be true, because a lot of people drop out. So our numbers, like all schools' numbers, are based upon how many people graduate or how many people left because they got a job. So if you leave here because you got a job, that's good. If you got a job after you graduated, that's good. If you die, if you're a student here and you die while you're a student, that doesn't count as bad. We don't have to count you, because if you're dead, you can't really get a job anyway, right? Okay. If you are rolled up, that doesn't count against us either, because if you're at Southern Desert or you're back on the yard, you're not eligible for a job. And the state says if you are somebody who lives at Catholic Charities or Salvation Army, or somebody that's classified as homeless, if you drop out because of that, we don't have to count those people in our numbers, because they have other problems that are unrelated to the school. We can't solve that. If you relapse in drugs, those people we don't have to count either. So our statistic is basically just who got jobs versus who could have gotten jobs. And we are now, I think we're over 87%, but I don't know the numbers for August yet, but I think it's over 80%, because most of the people graduating now are from Casa Grande, and I think virtually everybody from Casa Grande gets a job, where before, when we would have people like Eric or Brett or Dave Sweetland, good guys, they just were not ready for employment. Or what's his name, Clint, not ready for employment. So I think our numbers are probably over 90% right now. And we take a different look about employment than other schools. Other schools, because all schools are graded based upon employment, the trap that other schools fall into is, we're going to have a placement department. We're going to get you a job because we don't think you can get a job on your own, so we're going to help you get a job. And because if we don't help you get a job and you don't get a job, and we publish our numbers, and if our numbers are 40%, guess who's not coming to our school? Everyone. Okay, no one is going to go to a school, and no one is going to be allowed, or it's going to be very hard to go to a school if you go into a one-stop and they send you out and you want to go to a school that has a 40% placement rate. They're going to greatly discourage that. So the trap that other schools fall into is to assume, well, you're not going to be able to get a job on your own, so we're going to get you a job, and they end up getting you a job. Here, we want everybody to think of them, we do our best to treat everybody as an adult. And the thing about treating you as an adult, the expectation is that you're going to act like what? Like an adult, right? That people are going to act like adults. It always turns out, in study after study, if you treat people like convicts, you know, the famous Stanford study, you treat people like convicts, what do they act like? Convicts. You treat people like they're guards, what do they act like? Guards. They start pushing people around. You treat people like they're not smart enough to take care of themselves, and what they're going to do is they're going to act like they need you to do that. And so we don't do that. We don't fall into that trap. We treat our people like they're adults, and we want them to be held accountable for being an adult. And one of the things that adults have to do is they have to be self-sufficient out in the world. Okay, we don't subscribe to this thing of somebody needs to take care of us. We are back in, the 19th century where it was, there is no safety net. You have to go earn money to live or grow your own food or something like that. But the other trap we don't fall into is go get a career doing something you don't want to do. Most people are brought up believing there's my life and there's my work. I go to work because I have to. I have my life, which is completely different from my work. You wouldn't be able to, you wouldn't confuse what I do in my off hours with what I do when I'm at work. That's the thing that most people are conditioned to believe, and we see it on TV. All these shows where the dad goes out, he hates his job, he's got a lousy job, whatever, he comes home, and that's what he does. But it doesn't have to be that way. We don't do it that way. And when Nolan Bushnell was here, he said what guides him is not being able to tell the difference between whether he's working or not, because he enjoys it so much. So he'll do meetings on Saturdays. He'll have business meetings on Saturdays because he enjoys it. What do people who hate their work do, that work Monday through Friday, but they hate their job? What do they do on Saturdays? Drink. What else?
Do things with their family, go to the movies, try and relax.
Okay. Watch football. Okay. Yeah, they do other things, but do those other things help make them money or make them better? No, they don't. So, skipping ahead, last week I was doing a employment thing with the youth people, and we always have people that say, well, I don't want to take a job that's too low. Our plan is you find a company that you want to work for because they do what you want to do. You take whatever job you can get to get in there. Because wouldn't it be better being at a place where you want to be than sitting home watching TV, not getting paid? Be at a company you want to be at, getting paid, but not doing the job you really want to do, but maybe having the opportunity to get that job. Isn't that better than sitting at home watching TV and not making money? Maybe the sitting home watching TV part might seem fun, but not making any money is not really fun. And it doesn't lead to a good life and happiness, et cetera, et cetera. So where we deviate is we treat people like adults, we don't get them jobs, and we say you don't have to have work that is something you don't want to do. So that's our proactive employment plan. What we're going to work on this week is by the end of the week, everybody should have the foundation for a resume and should be prepared for an interview. So tomorrow we'll talk more about the mechanics. Today I want to do a high-level thing about it. The starting point is what's the process of getting a job? To get a job, what do you need to have?
You need a resume.
Okay, you need a resume. Okay, what else? No, to get a job, just a job. What do you need?
Parking.
No, not skills. Parking.
Heartbeat.
Heartbeat. Well, you have to be alive. So let's have that as a given. You're alive. And you're able to work. Yeah, Tom. Okay, well, let's say you have to be, let's take those things for granted. You have to be legally permitted to work. So you might, in Nevada, you have to have all these different cards. So, Tom? Well, everybody's overthinking. So you need a resume. You need to have a company that you want to work at, right?
Right.
Okay, you can't just walk outside and say, I have a resume, where's my job? Okay, and the third part, just the third simple part, is an interview. Right? Are you going to get a job if you don't interview? Probably not. Okay, unless you know somebody. If you know somebody, that's just hired. Sherry didn't have to be interviewed for her job at the Venetian because they knew her. Okay? You have to have a resume and you have to know where you want to work. The process is, first you need to have a resume. Well, actually, first you need to have a target company. Where do I want to work, right? Then you need to create a resume, and then the third thing is have an interview. Too many people think that the resume gets you the job. What is the purpose of the resume?
It show your skills and qualities.
Well, of these three things, what is the purpose of the resume? It's to get to the interview. That's the only purpose. The fundamental purpose of the resume is to get an interview. Okay, now, in the resume, you do talk about yourself, because if you talk about someone else, they're going to get the interview, right? So you have to talk about yourself in there. But the purpose of the resume is to get to an interview. Here's what you need to know and make sure you have written down somewhere. If your resume is not perfect, you're probably not going to get to the interview. We're going to talk more about that. If your resume is not perfect, you're probably not going to get to the interview. Very simply, why? Because in most jobs that are going through this process, there are hundreds of people applying for the job. They don't need to waste time on somebody who can't make a perfect resume. There's no excuse for having mistakes on your resume. Having spelling mistakes, grammar mistakes, formatting mistakes. There's no excuse for that. That's their belief. Okay, so your resume gets you to the interview. Your resume needs to reflect the company. It used to be, in fact, up until, well, for me at least, up until this very class or the last class or maybe last week's class, it was you have a resume. You have your 3 to 5 companies that you want to work for. You have your resume. Now, my thing is you have a different resume for each of these companies, even though they basically do the same thing. So one of the outcomes of this week is to have a resume that you have as the foundation for what you're going to go after. Because you probably won't have the 3 to 5 companies. You won't have researched them. You won't know the exact words to put in each of the resumes for each of the companies. But again, the point is, the thing to take home and not forget is you probably won't get to the interview if your resume is not perfect. But don't think that if you're sitting in the interview, that if they ask you a question and you say, well, I already put that in my resume, that's a good answer. Well, that's what they're looking for there. The resume doesn't get you the job, it gets you the interview. Too many people think if they have a great resume, it's going to get them the job. That's why people have other people write the resumes for them. If I have a good resume, I'm going to get the job. No, if you have a good resume, you're going to get the interview. If you go in the interview and you can't support the resume, in other words, as Rachel said, you're not the person who wrote this, or you're not the person this resume is about, guess what's going to happen? What's going to happen, Theo?
We throw it in the trash.
You're not going to get the job.
Good. You're not going to get
They're going to say, this isn't the person who wrote the resume.
Right.
Okay, this isn't the person I wanted to interview. So the resume gets you the interview, but don't think just because you got to the interview, your resume is going to get you the job. It's not going to get you the job. And if the resume does not reflect who you are, it's game over. Okay? The person in a real company, the person interviewing you, that's their job. they get evaluated based upon how well they do hiring people. So they take it very seriously, and they subscribe to email things and blogs about how do you spot a phony person? How do you spot somebody who didn't write the resume? Here's 10 questions to ask people to see if they're actually the person you think they are. Okay, one of the stayings in the Marines. Keith, can you hear me? Okay, so a question, we had a student who was a Marine. He said one of the things they teach you in the Marines is never underestimate your prey. Is that true? Never underestimate your prey. You know, so in this case, the interviewer is your prey. You're stalking them. You want to defeat them. Okay, don't underestimate the interviewer thinking you're going to go in there and bluff your way across. You had somebody write a resume. You read it 8 times. You could never have written it. Somebody else wrote it. You say, wow, this is really great. You kind of know what it says, but you don't really know because you didn't write it. You didn't memorize it. Don't walk into an interview with that because, you know, maybe 1 in 1,000 times you're going to get a job, but it's not the right strategy. Or you'll get the job if everyone else was just worse than you. Okay, but if somebody else is real, you have 0 chance of getting a job. So another thing that has happened is in this interviewing thing, because things are changing, is people think the more resumes I send out, eventually someone will bite. Okay, that's not the case anymore. Why?
Because
Why?
of the wording that goes on the resume. You have to take the extra time to change things around to fit the company.
Well, but let's say you don't. Let's say you send out 10 resumes a day.
Because then the company knows that you're not interested in really working for the company.
Yeah. So instead of saying, well, it's a law of averages. It's, you know, if I send out 1,000 resumes, eventually someone's going to hire me. Not necessarily. Because when you're in your interview, what do you think will happen if you're sitting in your interview and your guy says, have you been looking for a job? And you say, I've sent out 1,000 resumes. Is that going to help? If you say, the law of averages, I've sent out 1,000, you have to hire me because this is, the odds are somebody's going to hire me, it's got to be you. No, it doesn't. You don't want to be in a position, and the other thing, you know, as part of not underestimating this person, do not lie. Do not start any relationship off on a lie. Okay, you're going to be having this going on in the back of your mind. Are they going to catch me lying? And I have to remember every lie I told against these professional people who think you're lying or testing to figure out whether you're lying. You don't want to lie. So if they say, have you been looking for a job, or how long have you been looking, or, you know, any question that's basically, are you sending out a lot of resumes? That question could be asked a lot of different ways. We're trying to find out, do you want to work here or do you just want a job? And if they find you just want a job and the other guy that you're competing with really wants to work there, who's going to get employed? The other guy. The other guy will get employed unless your skills are so good that it doesn't really matter. So say, for example, you own a restaurant. You have somebody come in, good-looking woman. She says, you know what, I want to be honest with you. My goal is to be an actress, but I have to pay the bills. I got to pay the bills. So I'm really interested in working here because I have bills to pay. But if I get my opportunity comes in, if I get the script, if I go on an audition and they tap me and I get the job, I want to be honest with you, I'm going to not stay here. Under what conditions would they hire that person, that woman?
No one else.
Well,
Their skills are higher.
well, first of all, was she honest?
Yeah.
Yes.
How many times did I say, I want to be honest with you? Okay, so that's a point going, because what they're looking, one of the things they're looking for is dishonesty. And if you say, I'm an actress, or if you're really good looking, you go into a job in a restaurant, and what's going through their mind is, why does this really good looking person want to work in a restaurant? Why aren't you an actress, or why aren't you an entertainer? You know, that's what's going to be going through their mind. So she came out with what was on their mind. Now, what happens if she's the best looking applicant? Okay. Okay, so she's honest. She's better looking. Now let's say she's very friendly and outgoing. Okay. So are you going to say, as the owner of a restaurant, are you going to say, well, she can probably bring in more money and my customers are going to be happy, but I'm not going to hire her because she's not going to be here 5 years from now? No. So you would probably take that person. And then if she said, and you know what, here's another reason you should hire me, because I'm going to treat, every day I'm here at work, I'm going to treat as if I'm on stage. I'm not just going to go through the motions. I'm going to be rehearsing. I'm going to be developing my craft. So I can assure you, if you hire me for this position, I'll make you more money than anyone else, because I'm really going to put everything into it, just like I'm acting, because I need to keep in shape for acting. I got to practice somewhere. So instead of being in a play where I'm on a stage, I'm going to treat this place like it's my stage. Now, could that be compelling? Yeah, could be compelling. So there are some times where you can get a job over people who really want to work there. She didn't really want to work there. She wants to pay the bills, right? In that example, that's why she was there. I have bills to pay. I'm waiting for my ship to come in. I'm waiting for my shot. And when that thing comes, look, I'm going to be honest, I'm going to take it. But up until then, I'm going to give you 110%. And that guy says, well, you know, it doesn't really take a lot to train a waitress. I can always replace you, but yeah, you're going to be somebody my customers are going to like. And if they like you, what are they going to do? They're going to come back more often, tell their friends, stay longer. That's what people do in restaurants they like. Okay? So, but, you know, we don't have anybody here that's auditioning that's going to be an actress, right? So we can't really apply that. Okay. Okay, so if that is your plan, that would be your strategy. Okay? Now, so the fundamental thing here regarding work is there's two types of work. There's work that you need to do to pay the bills. That's called a job. But then there's the stuff you do for a career. That's the thing where you don't mind doing it on weekends because you enjoy it. It's not the thing you hate to do. That's not a career. Anything that's a career is things that people like to do. As Nolan said, he can't figure out the difference between work and pleasure. He likes work that much. He does what he wants. He's able to pursue what he wants so much that he can't tell the difference between the two. So for our purposes here, there's two things that people pay you for your time. One is a job, and one is a career. Now, a career doesn't mean you stay at a place for a long time. If you want to have a career in the restaurant business, you probably should start at the bottom, right?
Yeah.
Okay, if you want to own 10 restaurants, or let's say like Saphira, you want to own some convenience stores, the best strategy is not to start by just buying a convenience store and knowing nothing about the business, right? So you want to learn the business. So a career would be, I really like the restaurant business, or I like the car detailing business, or I like the dog, I like animals type of thing, and you learn everything there is to know about that position. And you could have many different companies, many different employers, but you are part of a plan. Okay? So career doesn't mean you're there for a long time. Time has nothing to do with whether it's a job or a career. So a job you get to pay the bills. And that's legitimate, that's kosher. A career is something you do to give meaning to your life. Okay, so for most people, when it comes time to the end is near, they're dying with their boots on, proverbial boots on. In other words, they're not killed in an automobile accident or something like that. They look back over their life. And in law school, the class at the law school I went to is called client practice. How do you deal with your clients? And they say, look, as an attorney, virtually every client is going to come in with one of two things. They regret something they did, and they need an attorney to help them solve the problem. Or they regret something they didn't do, and they need an attorney to solve their problems. So when it gets time to the end of life, you don't want to have wasted it hating what you do most of the time. Okay, just work thinking, well, you're doing it just to pay the bills, but you think that's how it's supposed to be. Where I grew up and everybody I grew up with, you went to work, you came home, you complained about work. When it came to the weekend, you did nothing related to what you did, and you made it a point to saying, no, that's work. I'm not doing that. I'm not touching that until Monday. Okay? But when you get to the end and you say, what did I accomplish? What did I do in my life? You don't want to be saying, I didn't really do anything because I just had a job. And remember, I think some people know this, there's 3 stages in life. Learning. What's the second stage? Earning. Okay, everybody goes through these 3 stages. Learning. Most people don't really finish that learning thing. Many people don't graduate from high school, don't go to college, don't get a graduate degree. They stop learning and they decide they're going to jump into what? They're going to move on to the earning stage. That's what most people do. I don't really need to learn. I need to go make money. And then the 3rd stage is yearning. Learning, earning, and yearning. So I heard this in my first class at university, in my first finance class. There's 3 stages of life: learning, earning, and yearning. If you do well learning, you have a better chance of doing well earning. Some people who didn't learn they win the lottery. Most of the people who win the lottery didn't really go to college. Okay? The more you earn, it should be the less you what? Yearn. The less you yearn. You know, who wants to be 70 years old working as a greeter at Walmart? You know. So Larson is a great opportunity for people who didn't do well at the learning stage to come back and have a second chance at it, and have a second chance to earn well, to have stable and meaningful employment, so that yearning is less. But most people in life, this is how they feel when they die. They have regret. I wish I would have done that. I wish I didn't do what I did. So getting paid, having a career is a great way to give meaning to your life. And the good news is there's more types of job now than have ever existed, and there's going to be even more types of job in the next 20 years than have ever existed. In fact, in the next 20 years, the jobs that are going to exist 20 years from now, half of them don't even exist today. Half of those jobs don't even exist today that are going to exist 20 years from now. Therefore, what becomes very important? Learning, right? Because if the job doesn't exist, how are you going to learn to do the job? Okay, you have to be able to do that. So we start with getting everybody to be very clear. There's a job and there's a career. A job can be good or bad. For most people, it's bad because they don't ever consider a career, or they think a career is a job that you have for a long, long, long time. They think that's what a career is. That's not what a career is. A career is something that you really enjoy doing. You don't say the clock is stopped, I stopped working on this. That's not a career. Yeah.
I got a question. What if you wanted to, I know a lot of people, this was years ago, wanted to always work for the city or county jobs. It is just a job,
Okay.
so they can get a pension and retire.
Okay.
You know,
So those people are deluded. Okay? Because if you think about it, okay, so you're going to give up the most productive years of your life just so that when you're not really productive and you're not in good health, you don't have to worry about it? Because what's the quality of life going to be then? Now, this is what was in the drinking water. This was the story that everybody was told. Okay? Go get a job, go get a government job, get one of these jobs, do your thing, get your gold watch after 20 years, 30 years, whatever it was, do that. Those people are the people who end up dying, and on their deathbed they say, what did I accomplish? Now, I want to exclude teachers, people who went to work for the government because they were a teacher and they were teaching, K through 12 or, whatever. I'm not including those people because they look back on their life like we saw with John Wooden last week, talking about how proud he was of how many attorneys, how many successful people he coached at UCLA. Anybody remember that?
Yeah.
Okay. So I want to exclude teachers from that. But bureaucrats that work down at the city that are just pushing paper, they will look back. Most of them will look back and say, I really didn't accomplish much. I wasn't in good health at the end. And, if it was either that or starve, that's better. But you can do something that you like to do. Yeah.
What about the people working at a Ford or a General Motors plant?
Okay. So again, that was a thing to pay the bills, right? Unless they had a plan. So if you just have a job to pay the bills and you hate it, that's not good. But let's say you worked at the Ford Motor Plant because you wanted your son to become a lawyer or a doctor. Okay? You're not there to pay the bills. Why are you there?
Helping him to go to college.
Exactly, because then you're going to feel what?
That's a career.
What are you going to feel about your son or daughter?
I accomplished something. I feel great.
Proud. You're going to feel proud of them, right?
Yeah.
And you're going to feel like you did your job as a Christian. You sacrificed so that somebody else could benefit. Yes?
The hope, of course, would be to not have this message really get across to everyone because we really can't eliminate all jobs.
Okay, we can't eliminate all jobs. Somebody has to do them. But it should be part of a plan. Okay, so this was a perfect segue. So this is perfectly okay to have to pay the bills because you have some other plan. Like, I want to put my kids through school, or I want to do this. I don't have an education for anything better than that. These, to Will's point, these are things that need to be done. What you don't want to do is say, I hate my job, I'm stuck in a rut, which is what a lot of people say. I hate my job, I'm stuck in a rut. If this is part of a bigger plan, if this job is part of a bigger plan, that's okay. If you're an actor and you have to be a waiter to get your first break, that's okay, because that's part of your plan. I'm only doing that because I need to pay the bills. if you say, well, I don't feel like auditioning today, I'll go do it tomorrow, and then you get dissuaded and you stop wanting to be an actor and you just settle for being a waiter because you gave up, that's not acceptable. And these people, there's a technical name for these people. These are called sheeple, okay? Or, less politically correct, wage slaves. Because they trade their freedom for a little bit of money, and they're always underpaid.
So basically working like a Hebrew slave.
They might be Hebrew slaves.
Okay.
Yes, they could be. Or they're just people who've given up their freedom. I could do anything I want to do. I choose to do something I hate to do because I'm too lazy to do something better. Okay, but again, to Will's point, there's a lot of government jobs. There's a lot of jobs in companies that need to be done. My brother works at is an owner of a very large pipeline company, the kind that does the big 5-foot water lines called Country. And he started out digging ditches. And he'll always say, there's always a place for somebody to dig ditches. Okay? If you dig ditches and you hate digging ditches, and you don't go find something else to do, that's somebody who's a sheeple or a wage slave. And as we got from our stoicism this morning, there's things you can control and things you can't control, right? But if you can't control it, don't complain about it. If you can control it, don't complain either. So if you're working digging ditches and you hate it, you shouldn't complain about it. You shouldn't do it.
Can that dish lead to your career?
Yeah, led to my brother's career. He started when he dropped out of college to go operate a backhoe, and he had to learn how to set grade and do all that kind of stuff. And 40 years later, he owns a very large pipeline company. Yeah.
Or like starting at a company like General Motors and factory and then end up becoming vice president of sales.
Okay, so there are a lot of guys that are in college to be engineers, and where did they work during the summer?
Burger King.
Well, let's say it was in Michigan, where they want to be an engineer. Well, they might work at Burger King to pay the bills, okay? But they might have decided, hey, I want to go work at General Motors because I want to design cars, and I want to see how cars are built. That's part of a plan.
They say you got a car before you walk in.
Okay, correct.
Is there a such thing as overqualified for a job?
Okay, is there such thing as being overqualified for a job? Yeah. So let's say you get a job as a waiter, but you were a chef and you owned a restaurant before. You're overqualified for being a waiter. That just means you have more qualifications. Okay, that in itself is neutral. If you start saying to the chef, well, when I had my restaurant, here's how we made the stuff, and the guy says, look, you're just the waiter right now. I don't, this is how we do things at our restaurant. When I was in college, I did an internship at Marriott to learn hotel management, but they had you learn the restaurant business. And one of the things was, 3-ring binder, here's our recipe book. This is what we have. And we expect our cooks, our chefs, to make this the way it says in the book. We don't want a chef to come in to say, oh, pepper steak, yeah, my pepper steak is way better than your pepper steak. My pepper steak makes your pepper steak, Marriott, look like dog food. I have the best pepper steak in the world. You're going to love my pepper steak. Marriott says, not if you work here, you make our pepper steak. Because somebody who comes to a Marriott hotel likes staying in Marriott hotels. They go to Marriott hotels, and they probably order pepper steak everywhere they go. And what is their expectation? That it's the same everywhere I go. And if they keep ordering at Marriott, that means they like our pepper steak. So that would be a case where somebody would be overqualified because they don't want to do what the person says. What the other person says, okay, so it's break time. Tomorrow we're going to focus on the importance of the resume. Thursday, we're going to do the interview. Okay, so tomorrow is the resume. The key takeaway is your resume has to be perfect, and all the resume does is get you to the interview. Okay? Dennis, any questions? I just noticed that we've gone over.
Okay. No questions.
Okay, great. We'll see everybody tomorrow.